The music died mid-note, replaced by the rustle of tactical gear and the stunned silence of over 100 guests. My older sister, Amanda Collins, a woman who treated happiness like a performance to be rated by applause, clutched my arm hard enough to leave crescent-shaped nail marks. Her face was an unsettling mix of rage and terror. "What is this? Who are these people?" she hissed. I didn't answer. My focus stayed on the mission, the real reason I was standing on the manicured lawn of her Dallas, Texas estate in the middle of her engagement party. The men moving across her perfect backyard weren't caterers or musicians. They moved like shadows, each step deliberate, their presence radiating quiet authority. I lifted my wrist mic just enough to speak into it. "Aegis, this is Valkyrie. The package is secure. Initiate Phase 2. The lead operator, built like a granite monument, turned his head toward me. His voice was calm, but his eyes behind the goggles were laser-focused. "Copy, Valkyrie." 2 hours earlier, that same lawn had looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. A string quartet played softly under twinkling lights. Waiters in crisp uniforms floated through the crowd, offering champagne to Dallas high society. My husband, Ethan, stood beside me, reading the atmosphere with the quiet precision of a man who had spent years in Force Recon. We felt like outsiders, ghosts slipping unnoticed through a party we were never truly part of. We weren't there to celebrate Amanda's engagement to her golden boy fiancé, Ryan Brooks. We were there because this setting, a luxury event surrounded by unsuspecting civilians, was the perfect stage for an operation I had been planning for months. Amanda, of course, spotted me almost immediately. She raised her glass high, her voice cutting across the music. "Look, everyone," the paper pusher soldier decided to show up. A ripple of polite laughter followed. Ryan just smirked, that same calculated charm that always seemed 1 degree too practiced. The insult was old and worn, a remnant from years of her dismissing my military career as some kind of failed ambition. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But then I saw it, across the lawn, Ethan's eyes locked with mine, and he gave the faintest nod. No one else would have noticed. That was the signal. The asset had the package. The sting of my sister's mockery evaporated instantly, replaced by cold operational focus. Amanda thought she was making a petty joke in front of her friends. She had no idea she'd just confirmed the timeline for the most sensitive mission I'd ever run. To understand why I brought a Tier 1 Special Operations unit to my sister's engagement party, you have to understand the 2 lives I've been living. In the Collins family, Amanda was always the star. I was the shadow. At family gatherings, she'd brag about landing another high-profile marketing contract, and my father, a real estate mogul who measured worth in dollar signs, would beam with pride. Ryan, the fiancé, was praised for his tech startup, a venture my father had helped fund. I was expected to sit there and clap along. Once, I tried to share some actual news, my reassignment to a new Joint Special Operations Command. My father barely looked at me before muttering, "Is so, more desk work?" "That's nice, honey." They thought I was a lieutenant in a dead-end logistics job in Norfolk, Virginia. They're a family disappointment. The soldier who never saw combat, who never measured up. They had no idea. In reality, my office was a secure SCIF in Coronado, California, the heart of Navy Special Operations Planning. There, I wasn't Elena Collins, the disappointing daughter. I was Valkyrie, lead mission strategist for a Joint Special Operations Task Force. I briefed operators whose skill sets could shape global outcomes, men who treated every mission like a sacred oath. And this mission? It wasn't about an enemy halfway across the world. It was about Ryan Brooks, Amanda's charming, well-connected fiancé, whose name had landed on a classified watch list. In the fluorescent glow of the SCIF, I stood before a wall of intelligence feeds and said it out loud. The engagement party will be our window. He'll be overconfident, relaxed, surrounded by civilians. That's when we move. No one in that room questioned me. They knew my intel was never wrong. I had tried, once, to warn my mother. Months earlier, on the phone, I'd said, "Mom, are you sure about Ryan? Something feels off." Her reply was quick, defensive, and dismissive. "Lena, you've always been jealous of your sister's happiness. Ryan is wonderful. Not everyone can land a guy like that, especially with your kind of job." I stopped trying after that. My family was comfortable in their fiction. I let them believe it. Only Ethan knew the truth. We didn't need to explain it to each other. When he said, "They have no idea who you really are," I simply nodded. They didn't. And they were about to find out in the most unforgettable way possible. That night in Dallas, the plan was set. Ethan's role was critical. Get visual confirmation of Ryan holding a black leather briefcase that intel suggested contained a satellite phone and encrypted hard drive. Once that nod came, I'd have a 15-minute window to bring in the team. Amanda's little jab about the paper pusher soldier hadn't just been petty, it had been the spark to pull the trigger. And I was ready. Amanda's laughter still echoed faintly across the lawn when Ethan gave me the nod. The motion was barely a breath, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. My pulse didn't quicken. I trained too long for that, but a shift happened inside me. The party was no longer a party. It was an operational theater. I excused myself from the small circle of guests who had been standing close enough to witness Amanda's performance. My smile was polite but hollow, the kind you give people you'll never see again. Ethan was already moving toward the far edge of the property, drifting into the shadows as naturally as if he'd been born there. We didn't run. We didn't even hurry. The art of blending into the background is in moving at the exact speed of your environment. Too fast and people notice. Too slow and they sense hesitation. We were neither. We were ghosts. By the time we reached the street, the sounds of the party were muted, replaced by the low hum of Dallas traffic. My black SUV waited exactly where I'd left it. Inside, the air was cool, smelling faintly of leather and gun oil. The dashboard glowed with the soft green light of encrypted comms. I put on my headset and keyed the MIC. "Aegis, this is Valkyrie. Execute." I say again, execute. Operation Iron Veil is a go. The reply was immediate. Solid copy. Initiating breach in 60. From the back gate of Amanda's estate, a muffled thump signaled the detonation of a small breaching charge. Inside the SUV, I could picture the sequence as clearly as if I was standing there. The gate swinging open, operators flowing in like a dark tide, weapons low but ready, every movement rehearsed until it was muscle memory. Guests would hear it but wouldn't understand. That was the point. Confusion buys seconds, and seconds a currency in our line of work. I switched to the tactical feed. A split screen showed helmet cam footage from two operators, one moving through the landscaped perimeter, the other cutting straight across the lawn toward the back of the house. The audio was clean. No shouting, no chaos. Just quiet, purposeful movement. On the lawn, the string quartet's melody faltered, then stopped entirely. The crowd shifted uneasily. Amanda, still holding her champagne flute, looked around with the narrowed eyes of someone whose perfect world had been slightly disturbed. Ryan stayed at her side, smiling thinly, as if whatever was happening was beneath his concern. Then the SEAL teams emerged from the shadows. 8 men in 2 squads, their gear matte black against the golden glow of the party lights. They moved like liquid steel, calm, fluid, unstoppable. Guests instinctively stepped back, parting like water around a rock. Some whispered. Some froze. Not a single operator spoke to them. Their eyes were on one man. Ryan didn't have time to process what was happening. 2 operators flanked him in an instant, each gripping an arm with precise, controlled force. There was no struggle, only a firm, inescapable hold. Another operator stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying authority. "Mr. Ryan Brooks, you are being detained under the authority of the National Security Act." Amanda's practiced smile crumbled. Her voice came out shrill, edged with panic. "You can't do this. Who are you?" I opened the SUV door and stepped onto the street, walking toward the glow of the lawn. As I approached, the team leader spotted me. His stance shifted, straightened, sharpened. He met me halfway, stopping exactly 2 feet away. The asset is secured. Package recovered. Premises are clear." The words were clipped, professional, and loud enough for Amanda, and my entire family, to hear. Amanda's face was pale, her eyes darting between me and the operator. Is she repeated, the word shaky. "Why are they calling you?" Before I could answer, my father stepped forward, chest puffed in the same way he used to when negotiating a business deal. "I demand to know who's in charge here." The operator didn't even look at him. He kept his gaze locked on me. "Mission Commander Valkyrie is in charge." The name hung in the air like a live wire. My family didn't recognize it, but they could feel the weight in it. The murmurs from guests turned into a hush. Amanda stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, but unable to make sense of the picture forming in her mind. The operators didn't linger. With Ryan in custody, they melted back into the night as quickly as they had arrived. In their place, plainclothes agents from the FBI began filtering through the crowd, separating guests for questioning. The clinking of champagne glasses was replaced by the rustle of notepads and the murmur of low, authoritative voices. Amanda stood in the center of her party, surrounded by people but entirely alone. No one approached her. No one offered comfort. She had wanted the spotlight. Now it burned cold. I found Ethan near the gate. We exchanged a look that said everything without a word. The mission was over. The fallout, for my sister, was only beginning. People think missions like this come together in a matter of days. They don't. They start as whispers, faint, seemingly unconnected pieces of information that, if you're patient enough, form a pattern. Ryan Brooks was one such whisper. The first red flag appeared 8 months before Amanda's engagement party. I was in the SCIF in Coronado, reviewing a report on foreign corporate shell companies flagged for suspicious transactions. Buried deep in the data was a familiar name, R. Brooks Consulting LLC, a Delaware-registered firm that, on paper, provided as software solutions. In reality, it had no discernible clients and had funneled over $2 million through accounts linked to a sanctioned telecom broker in Eastern Europe. It was enough to move his name onto our persons of interest list. It wasn't enough to make a move. 3 months later, a SIGINT intercept changed everything. An encrypted satellite call between the broker and a US-based number traced directly to Ryan's personal cell. The voice analysis was conclusive. He wasn't just dabbling in shady deals, he was facilitating them. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Why would I? They would have dismissed it as paranoia, or worse, accused me of jealousy. So I did what I do best. I built a plan. The operation needed 3 things. 1. A location where Ryan would be relaxed and overconfident. 2. 3. A pretext for me to be there without arousing suspicion. 4. 5. A narrow window where my team could move in without civilians getting hurt. 6. Amanda's engagement party fit all 3 requirements perfectly. She'd invited half of Dallas high society, including people she wanted to impress so badly that nothing would convince her to cancel or change the date. Ryan would be showing off, basking in her attention. And I could attend as the unremarkable little sister, someone no one paid attention to. Once the target and setting were locked, I began assembling the puzzle. The breaching team would be SEAL Team 7, Echo Platoon, chosen for their speed and surgical precision. The FBI's Dallas field office would handle the post-capture processing. Local police were quietly ordered to reroute traffic around the estate that evening under the pretense of a VIP event requiring security. No one outside the operational circle knew the truth. Ethan's role was just as critical. He would be my on-site trigger, the one to confirm visual contact with the package, Ryan's black leather briefcase. According to intercepted chatter, it contained a secure satellite phone and an encrypted hard drive holding the proof of his dealings. Once Ethan gave the nod, the SEALs would have exactly 15 minutes to breach, detain, and extract before Ryan had any chance to destroy evidence or slip away. We codenamed the mission Operation Iron Veil. Every piece of planning passed across my desk. I wrote the rules of engagement myself: minimum force necessary, 0 collateral damage. The moment Ryan was secured, the FBI would transition in, keeping the operation official in the eyes of the public. I wasn't just participating in his downfall. I was designing it. The final briefing happened 2 nights before the party. Captain West, my commanding officer, appeared on the secure video link from DC, his face carved into that unreadable expression all seasoned leaders share. "The asset is confirmed?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied. "My husband has eyes on him already. We're greenlighting upon my signal." He studied me for a long moment before nodding once. "Your call, Valkyrie. Execute at your discretion." On the surface, my presence at the engagement party was nothing unusual. I arrived with Ethan, smiled when spoken to, and let Amanda's social circle dismiss me the way they always had. No one saw the tactical map in my head, the estate divided into sectors, the SEALs' approach routes, the likely choke points for guests. I stayed in the background, sipping club soda from a champagne flute to keep appearances. From across the lawn, I watched Ryan move through the crowd like he owned the place, the briefcase never far from his side. My internal clock kept ticking. It was only a matter of time. Amanda found me, of course. She always did. Her insults had evolved over the years from pointed comments about my paperwork military job, it to full-on public performances. That night was no exception. Her line about the paper pusher soldier, it was nothing new. What was new was the fact that it happened less than 5 minutes after Ethan had confirmed the briefcase. She didn't know it, but she'd just handed me the exact timing I needed. Her attempt to embarrass me had synced the operation to perfection. The rest you already know. Ethan's nod, my quiet exit from the party, the breaching charge at the back gate. Ryan never saw it coming. Amanda never understood what was happening, at least, not until the team leader addressed me as a Mission Commander Valkyrie in front of the entire guest list. By then, it was far too late for her to rewrite the story. The moment Ryan disappeared into the dark with the SEAL team, the estate felt like a stage where the curtain had suddenly dropped mid-performance. Guests stood frozen, their champagne flutes halfway to their lips, conversations severed mid-sentence. The golden lights Amanda had strung across the lawn no longer felt warm. They looked harsh, spotlighting her in the center of a scene she couldn't control. She turned toward me, her voice cracking between fury and disbelief. "Laner, what did you do? Who are you?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch until even the rustle of the FBI agents moving through the crowd became a kind of soundtrack. Amanda's friends, the same ones who had laughed at her joke earlier, now hovered just far enough away to avoid being caught in the blast radius of her humiliation. My father stepped forward like a man walking into a boardroom fight. "This is my property. I demand to speak to whoever's running this operation." The FBI agent nearest him didn't flinch. "Sir, please step back." Then the SEAL team leader reappeared from the shadows, standing tall beside me. His voice carried over the lawn, calm but authoritative. "Mission Commander Valkyrie is in charge here." He didn't glance at my father. He didn't need to. His eyes were locked on me with the kind of respect that isn't performed, it's earned. The words hit harder than any explosion. Amanda's mouth fell open. My father's posture deflated slightly, like he'd been winded. My mother, who'd been standing near the refreshment table, looked as though she'd seen a ghost wearing my face. Amanda stammered. "Mission Commander? You? What is this? Some kind of joke?" I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. "It's not a joke. And this is not your night anymore." The agents began separating guests, guiding them toward different areas of the lawn for questioning. FBI evidence techs in gloves moved with quiet efficiency, photographing the briefcase and its contents before sealing them in evidence bags. The music equipment sat abandoned, the quartet long gone. The scent of champagne mixed uneasily with the faint chemical tang of tactical gear. Amanda's perfect engagement party was now a federal crime scene. I caught Ethan's eye across the lawn. He was already speaking to one of the agents, handing over his visual confirmation notes. His calm presence was an anchor in the swirl of controlled chaos. We'd been in situations far more dangerous than this, but never one so personal. When he rejoined me, he asked quietly, "Ready to wrap this up?" "More than ready," I said. We walked together toward the main gate. The reporters would arrive soon. Word like this doesn't stay contained for long in Dallas. I had no interest in giving anyone a quote. Halfway to the street, I heard Amanda's voice again. "Lena, don't you walk away from me." I stopped, turned, and faced her. "Amanda, for years you've made sure everyone knew how little you thought of me. Tonight, you found out you never knew me at all." Her face flushed crimson. Whether from anger or shame, I couldn't tell. This is my life you're wrecking. I didn't raise my voice. No. Ryan wrecked at the moment he decided to sell classified technology to foreign buyers. I just made sure he didn't get away with it. She blinked, her mouth working but no words coming out. My father stepped in again, this time with less fire. Why didn't you tell us? Because you wouldn't have believed me, I said simply. You never have. And with that, I turned my back on the lawn, on the lights, on the collapsing illusion my family had built around themselves. Ethan opened the SUV door for me, and as I slid inside, I didn't look back. From the driver's seat, I could still see the estate in the rearview mirror, Amanda standing in her designer dress, surrounded by people but utterly alone, my father staring after me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, something between shock and dawning recognition. The operation was over. The mission was complete. But the personal forelight? That was only just beginning. The drive away from Amanda's estate felt almost unnervingly quiet. The air outside still smelled faintly of the Texas summer heat, but inside the SUV, it was the cool, steady hum of climate control and the soft crackle of the encrypted comms channel. Ethan drove, eyes on the road, both hands loose on the wheel. He didn't ask me how I felt. He knew I didn't process missions until they were truly over. We reached the downtown FBI field office in under 15 minutes. From there, Ryan was already in custody, being moved to a secure holding facility for initial interrogation. The briefcase was logged, sealed, and sent to a classified evidence lab before midnight. My part wasn't to interrogate or analyze. My part was to close the loop. The next morning, I sat across from Captain West in a secure conference room at NAS North Island. He had the after-action report in front of him, a thick binder marked Top Secret and No Foreign. His eyes scanned the pages in silence. Finally, he closed the binder and looked up at me. Clean entry. Clean exit. Zero collateral damage. FBI has enough to prosecute without touching classified material. You've set a new operational standard, Valkyrie. I kept my tone professional. Thank you, sir. It was a team effort. He studied me for another moment, then a faint smile ghosted across his face, the closest thing to praise you get from a man like West. Promotion paperwork's already in motion. You'll be commander before the month's out. The weight of his words didn't hit me until later that night. In the military, rank isn't just a title. It's recognition that you've been trusted to lead more, shoulder more, carry the weight for others. And in my world, every step up meant fewer people could ever know what I truly did. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of my task force, silver oak leaves freshly pinned to my collar. We were in a small, windowless briefing theatre, the kind that hummed with recycled air and the quiet energy of people who lived for precision. Behind me, the title slide read, Case Study, Operation Iron Veil. Lead Planner, Commander Laner e Valkyrie e Collins. I walked them through every phase, the intel gathering, the timing, the coordination with multiple agencies, the civilian shielding. I didn't mention Amanda's name. I didn't have to. This wasn't about personal grudges. It was about operational excellence. When the briefing ended, several younger analysts stayed behind to ask questions. I answered each one, watching their pens move quickly, their eyes sharp. I could see in them the same hunger I'd once had. Maybe still had. Outside the secure spaces, life was quieter. Ethan and I returned to our home in Coronado, a modest-looking place from the street that had reinforced walls, encrypted comms, and a safe room big enough to hold 6 people. To neighbors, we were just another Navy couple. To the people who knew our call signs, we were something else entirely. The night after my promotion, we hosted a small gathering, not family, not old friends from Dallas, but my real family now, operators, analysts, techs, logistics specialists. People who had spent hours, days, months making sure the mission succeeded without anyone outside ever knowing it happened. We laughed, swapped stories that would never make it into any official report, and for a few hours, let ourselves just be people. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. The text was short. They told me everything. Ryan's going away for life. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell us who you were? Amanda. I read it twice. Then a third time. I searched for some flicker of old anger, some satisfaction, even pity. There was nothing. Just a deep, steady calm. That message was for someone who no longer existed, through a paper pusher soldier she'd mocked. And that woman was gone. Without hesitation, I archived the conversation. Not deleted. Just filed away. Like a closed case. By the time I slipped the phone back into my pocket, Ethan was handing me a fresh drink. Work? He asked. No, I said, smiling faintly. Just her old noise. He didn't push. We'd both learned to leave certain doors closed. 6 months after Operation Iron Veil, I walked into the main briefing theatre at the Joint Special Operations Command Annex in Coronado, not as an attendee, but as the person everyone else was there to hear. The polished oak podium and tiered seating weren't new to me, but the weight of standing at the front, wearing the silver oak leaves of a commander, carried its own gravity. The screen behind me displayed the title. Case Study, Operation Iron Veil, Strategic Planning in Civilian Environments. Commander Laner Valkyria Collins, Lead Planner. Rows of fresh-faced analysts, intel officers, and operators filled the seats. Some were barely out of their 20s, their notepads already open, pens poised. Others were seasoned NCOs with that wary, measuring look that says, "Convince me you're worth listening to." I didn't start with the mechanics of the mission. Instead, I talked about patience, the art of waiting for the perfect moment, the discipline to resist acting before the conditions were exactly right. I told them that missions succeed not because of one decisive act, but because every piece, every person, every variable is positioned long before anyone pulls a trigger. When I finally reached the operational breakdown, timelines, routes, contingencies, no one fidgeted. No one glanced at their phone. They were with me. And when it ended, they clapped, which was rare in rooms like this. That night, back home, I sat on the back patio with Ethan, a glass of bourbon in my hand, the Pacific breeze carrying the salt air. He asked, "Think any of them will end up in your chair one day?" I smiled. If they're smart enough to take notes, maybe. We fell into a comfortable silence, the kind we both appreciated more than small talk. That was when my phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't a random number. It was Amanda. Her message was longer than the last one, but it had the same undertone, confusion wrapped in disbelief. "I've had time to think. I still don't understand why you kept your real life hidden from us. We're sisters. We should have been there for each other." I read it twice before typing back a short reply. You were there for the version of me you liked. That's not the same thing. I didn't send it. Not yet. I left it in drafts, poured another bourbon, and let the moment pass. 2 weeks later, fate, or maybe irony, put Amanda and me in the same room. It was a charity gala in downtown Dallas. My task force had been invited quietly through a defense contractor who was sponsoring the event. I'd attended with Ethan, both of us in formal evening attire that drew no more attention than any other well-dressed couple in the crowd. Amanda was there, too, in a gown that probably cost more than most people's yearly rent. She was working the room like she always had, air kisses, practiced laughter, eyes scanning for the next conversation worth her time. She didn't see me until she turned from the bar, glass of champagne in hand. For a fraction of a second, she froze. Then her expression shifted into something careful, half surprise, half performance. Lena, I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know you'd be here either, I said evenly. We stood there in the low hum of the gala, surrounded by strangers who had no idea that the last time we'd seen each other, her fiancé had been dragged off in federal custody. Amanda recovered quickly, slipping into the poised tone she used when she wanted to sound gracious. I heard you've moved up in your career. Something like that. You must be very busy. Her smile was tight. She wanted to ask questions, but not here, not with an audience. I am, I said, then let the silence stretch. Years ago, I would have rushed to fill it. Not anymore. Finally, she looked away, scanning the crowd as though she'd already moved on. Well, it was good to see you. You too, I said, though we both knew it wasn't really true. As she walked away, I realized I felt nothing. No spike of resentment, no flash of satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that whatever connection we once had wasn't coming back. And that was fine. Ethan returned with 2 glasses of champagne. Friend of yours? Relative, I said, taking the glass. Sort of. The Dallas Gala was the last time I saw Amanda face to face. For months afterward, there was nothing but silence. No texts, no calls. If she spoke about me, I never heard it. I assumed she'd gone back to her social orbit, carefully erasing the night of the engagement party from her narrative. Then, one rainy Tuesday evening in Coronado, my phone buzzed. I'd just come in from a run, still damp with sweat, the faint tang of the ocean salt on my skin. The message was from her. I know I've said this before, but I want to say it without any audience, without anyone else in the room. I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you did, or who you really were. I thought I did, but I was wrong. I hope one day we can talk, for real. I stood there in the kitchen, phone in hand, letting the words sit. It wasn't the first apology I'd ever received from her, but it was the first one that sounded like it might be genuine. And yet, I didn't feel the pull to respond. Years ago, an apology like that would have been a life raft, a sign that maybe we could go back to something resembling sisterhood. But I wasn't drowning anymore. I'd built my own shore. I archived the message. Not deleted. Not answered. Just filed away. A closed file. The truth was, I didn't need her understanding anymore. My worth wasn't tied to whether my family finally saw me. The night Ryan was taken off that lawn, something in me shifted permanently. I stopped measuring myself by their expectations. A week after Amanda's text, I found myself back in the JSOC briefing theatre, this time reviewing an op plan from a junior mission planner. She was smart, sharp enough to see 3 moves ahead, but still learning the discipline of patience. "Your plan's solid," or I told her, tapping the paper, "but your window's too wide. You're giving the target too much room to adjust. Tighten it to 15 minutes, maximum." She nodded, scribbling notes. "Like you did in Iron Vale?" I raised an eyebrow. "Who told you about that?" "Everyone talks about it," as she said, smiling. "It's in the training modules now." Hearing that caught me off guard. Iron Vale wasn't in the headlines, wasn't in any public archive. But inside our world, it had become a benchmark, an example of how to plan a civilian environment op with 0 collateral damage and maximum precision. I realized, standing there, that this was my real legacy. Not the grudging recognition of my family, but the way my work would outlive me in the quiet skill sets of people who would never know my name outside a call sign. That night, Ethan and I had a few of the team over for dinner. These were the people who'd been there for Iron Vale: operators, intel officers, comms specialists. We grilled steaks, drank beer, told the kind of stories that only sound absurd if you don't know the kind of work we do. At one point, one of the younger operators asked, "Oh, what's it like, knowing you took down someone you were connected to?" I didn't answer right away. Ethan glanced at me, as if checking whether I'd shut the question down. Finally, I said, "It's like any other op. You have the mission, and you have the noise. You do the mission. The noise can wait." No one pressed further. In our world, that was answer enough. Later, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, I stepped out onto the back patio. The night air was cool, the Pacific dark except for the white break of waves near the shore. Somewhere far away, another mission was already taking shape, someone else's target already being mapped. I thought about Amanda's message again, and about all the years I'd tried to prove myself to people who weren't looking. I felt no anger, no regret. Just a steady, unshakable peace. Some stories you close with words. Others, you close by walking away and never needing to look back. By the time spring rolled into Coronado, the name Iron Vale had become more than an operation. Inside certain circles, it was shorthand for doing the impossible without leaving a mess behind. I heard it whispered in hallways during planning sessions, cited in secure video calls between commanders. No one ever said Amanda's name, or Ryan's, or Dallas. They didn't have to. The op wasn't about them anymore, it was about the standard it set. One late afternoon, I was in my office reviewing preliminary intel for an upcoming assignment. The target was overseas this time. High value, no family ties, no personal noise. Cleaner, in a way. But as I scanned the maps and satellite imagery, I realized that Iron Vale had changed me more than I'd admitted. Before that mission, I'd drawn hard lines between personal and professional. But once you've had to bring down someone your own blood vouched for, you stop pretending those lines exist. You learn that sometimes your professional duty doesn't just cross into your personal life, it cuts through it like a blade. That night, Ethan and I went for a walk along the beach. The tide was low, the air carrying that mix of sea salt and faint jet fuel from the nearby base. We didn't talk much. We rarely had to. At one point, I said, almost absently, "I think that part of my life's done." Ethan glanced at me. "Dallas?" I nodded. Not just the place. The role. The version of me they thought they knew. He didn't hesitate. Good. You were never her. The next morning, a small package arrived at our door. No return address, but the handwriting on the label was unmistakable. Inside was a photo of Amanda and me from years ago, taken at some long-forgotten family barbecue. We were both younger, hair windblown, holding paper plates stacked with food. On the back, she'd written, "We were different then." I missed that. I stared at it for a while. Not with nostalgia, but with the awareness that whatever would been in that photo was gone. And even if we could get back there, I wasn't sure I'd want to. I slipped the photo into a plain manila envelope, labeled it with the date, and filed it in the same locked cabinet where I kept other personal artifacts from past missions. Not destroyed. Not displayed. Just archived. A week later, I flew to DC for high-level mission prep. It was the kind of work I'd always wanted. Tight deadlines, high stakes, no room for ego. In the secure planning room, I stood over a digital map with senior officers and intel analysts, walking them through insertion routes, exfil contingencies, and the weather windows that could make or break the op. One of the younger officers, a sharp Air Force captain, asked me, how do you keep it from getting personal? You've got this way of stripping everything down to the mission." I thought about the question for a moment before answering. You don't keep it from getting personal. You accept that it already is. Then you do it anyway. He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away for later. Back in Coronado, I began what I now considered a ritual before major deployments, locking away anything from my personal life that didn't need to travel with me. I set my phone to strict operational mode, scrubbed personal data, and left only essential contact methods. Amanda's number was still in there, buried in a muted thread I hadn't opened in months. I scrolled past it without hesitation. Ethan watched from the kitchen doorway. "You ever going to delete it?" "No," I said, powering the phone down. "It's not about erasing the past. It's about making sure it stays where it belongs." When my deployment orders came through, I felt the same steady calm I always did before an op. The packing list was second nature by now. But tucked between the weight of gear and the layers of planning was the quiet knowledge that there was no way back to who I'd been before Dallas. And I didn't want there to be. I was still Lena Collins, still Commander Valkyrie, but now there was no divide between the two. The shadow life I'd hidden from my family wasn't something to conceal anymore. It was simply my life. The morning I left for my next deployment, the sun was just coming up over Coronado. The air was cool enough to make you believe summer was still a few weeks away, and the streets were quiet except for the faint hum of a garbage truck in the distance. Ethan drove me to the base, hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. We didn't talk about where I was going or what I'd be doing. He didn't ask, and I wouldn't have told him anyway, not because I didn't trust him, but because operational silence was our language. It had been since the day we met. As we passed the checkpoint and the base came into view, I thought about how different this felt from the night of Amanda's engagement party. Then, I'd been walking into a mission that carried the weight of my personal history. This time, there was no such baggage. No family dynamics to navigate, no ghosts to confront. Just the mission. That, I realized, was its own kind of freedom. Before heading to the secure departure area, I stopped by my office. The room was neat, every surface cleared except for a small black case on my desk. Inside were a few personal items I always kept close during deployments: a notebook, a pen, a silver coin Ethan had given me after my promotion, and a photo. Not the one Amanda had sent. The family barbecue shot stayed locked in the cabinet at home, but a different one. It was taken in the SCIF the night before Iron Vale, all of us standing around the mission board, the air thick with focus. No one in the photo was smiling, but you could see the unity, the trust. This was my family now. I slid the case into my rucksack and locked the office door behind me. Out on the tarmac, the transport aircraft sat waiting, its engines idling in a low, steady growl. The loadmaster waved me up the ramp, but before I stepped inside, I took one last look at the horizon. Somewhere out there, hundreds of miles away, was the city where I'd grown up, the people who still thought of me as the quiet, forgettable sister who never made much of herself. They could keep that version of me. I didn't need to correct the record. I'd already written the truth in actions they'd never see. Inside the aircraft, I strapped in, the hum of the engines growing louder. Across from me, another operator gave me a quick nod of acknowledgement. No names, no chatter, just the shared understanding that we were heading towards something we couldn't afford to get wrong. As the plane began to roll, I felt the familiar shift, the outside world fading, the mission world taking over. It wasn't an escape. It was a return to where I belonged. Hours later, somewhere over the Pacific, I found myself staring out at the thin line of dawn splitting the horizon. The cabin lights were dim, most of the team catching what rest they could. I thought about legacy, not the kind my family valued, with property and public recognition, but the kind you leave in the people you've trained, the missions you've executed, the threats you've removed quietly, without fanfare. Iron Vale would never be in the history books. My name would never be attached to it in any public record. And yet, inside the tight-knit, unseen world where I operated, it had already become part of the playbook. That was enough. By the time we touched down at our forward base, I had shed the last remnants of who I'd been before Dallas. Not because of the rank on my collar or the ops I'd led since then, but because I no longer felt the need to prove my worth to anyone outside this circle. Some people spend their lives trying to be understood. I'd learned that it was far more powerful to be effective. As we filed off the aircraft into the blinding morning light, I felt the weight of my rucksack settle evenly on my shoulders. In that moment, the only thing that mattered was the mission ahead, the people at my side, and the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Some stories end with reconciliation. Mine didn't. Mine ended with clarity. And from clarity, I'd built a life I didn't need to explain to anyone.